Good morning, everyone. I'm Henry. It's nice to be back here on stage. A special year for me because for the first time we're a sponsor here at MaxSysAdmin. And yeah, Zentral is a declarative MDM that makes the best open source tools easy to use, so you don't have to build your own stack. And today we're going to launch our voting system for Google Santa, or Santa. And I'm really excited to show you, but before I want to do a quick recap on what happened last year. At Zentral, we're super passionate about GitOps, and this is an approach that uses DevOps principles to apply them to device management. So code is stored in Git repositories, changes are made via pull requests and review processes, and we leverage CI/CD pipelines for the automation. And the idea is to place all configurations, profiles, packages, tools, rules, and checks all into repositories and start to manage a fleet of Macs and iOS devices with a MDM protocol, of course, with GitOps automation. So in our view, it's the best way that regulated businesses, often from healthcare and pharma, fintech, transportation, software, AI, can meet their compliance demands. However, only a few teams have built complete GitOps device management stacks, and they're tailored for their specific landscape. And for vendors, this is largely uncharted territory. And for teams, it can be even overwhelming. So last year, here on stage, we made a push for a whole macOS client defined as code, and for a conference session here at the MaxSysAdmin. And we did a geeky deep dive into how we developed it. So our big advancement was the birth of the official Zentral Terraform provider, and the device management with GitOps, I would say, is still in its infancy. Let's say also last year the reviews have been mixed. Here's some of the feedback we got. Too technical, a bit messy, cool but not feasible in the real IT world. Well, I don't know. Marty McFly made a funny comment in a similar situation, and we heard about GitOps already here at the conference. So, but back to the future of Zentral. In retrospect, yeah, building a client from code was more of a proof of a concept than a solution last year ago. So the question is, GitOps practical? It turns out the answer is yes, but you have to get two things right to make it accessible. At Zentral, it's our mission to set forth a workable path to GitOps that's easy to integrate. And when teams are considering GitOps for device management, the big problems they're facing and the questions they're asking are, where do you start and what are the best practices? How does your stack, the current stack, even allow for GitOps? And how much work is it to build your own? And how much to maintain that? And how do you deal with the knowledge transfer and the loss thereof when someone leaves the company? So requirement one is it has to be easy to work with. Today, Zentral comes pre-configured as a ready-to-use stack of open source tools. And almost everything in Zentral can be a Terraform resource that you can manage in a repository. And it's how we use Zentral ourselves today. And we have what we call a standard hardened client because there's no secret stored in it. We can share it with our customers. And Zentral is almost like a framework for device management as code. And IT teams can use it to put rigorous processes in place and see exactly what the state of device management looks like. And it's the opposite of a black box and highly transparent. The requirement two is that it has to be easy to implement. So for that, we have developed a high availability enterprise SaaS architecture that's available now. Each tenant gets its own stack, a load balancer, database, event store, metrics, and dashboarding tools. And the deployments are fully isolated at the network level to contain the impact of security events. We secured a SOC 2 Type 1 attestation in May on that SaaS. With 2 pen tests under our belt, we're on track for SOC 2 Type 2 next month. And we have a group of pilot customers that's eager to start with GitOps MDM. And our goal is to keep improving that in the adoption phase so you can hit the ground running. And we want you to start to use more and build less. What's special about Zentral, you ask? First, we go with the flow. Zentral always strives to go where the Apple platform is going, and we try not to work against it. For example, we make sure that things like platform SSO can be deployed easily with Zentral, and we never had a plan for a custom login experience that would have broken key OS functionalities. Also, we adopt DDM wherever we see it fit and where it's possible. And in the same way, we have integrated our tools, Santa, OS Query, and Monkey, just true to the source. They're not hidden within a branded agent. And if you've learned the tools before, you can keep using them as you were. And you can apply the knowledge that you already have, or that many of you already have. And to make these tools really useful together, they have to be organized around one central inventory. That's the key idea here. And for that, we have a unified inventory for this, to harmonize all the data that we collect in Zentral, pull all the information from these different tools together. And whether you're a beginner or a seasoned practitioner with them, we aim to give you a head start. So we provide you with quality of life improvements like augmentations and workflows that work across all modules. And you can organize your fleet with machine tags to scope the deployment of any piece of configuration, like a monkey package, an query query, a Santa rule, or an MEM configuration profile. And automatic synchronization with the identity providers is important, and we provide extra information in this direction to customize the configuration for the devices. For example, you can include a custom IDP attribute in a certificate distributed via SCAP easily, with a SCIM integration for some IDPs, and yeah. Also, group memberships can be used to map tags for dynamic scoping. So the IDP sets those settings, and further custom workflows are possible with the extensive API. Next, the visibility and feedback loops are important. Zentral's architecture is event-driven. That means anything that ever happens in Zentral is an event. When the state of a machine changes, Zentral emits an event. When it changes setting, Zentral emits an event. And all of this makes Zentral great for working with security. You can forward all the events to your CM system, or you can use Zentral's event routing and filtering capabilities to scope exactly what you want to ship. And we have a compliance hub. Here, the information from different sources can be processed to determine whether an attribute of a device is compliant or not. And we fully integrated the macOS Security Compliance project. You can tailor the guidelines for the project or from the project to your needs and use the output scripts in Zentral as individual compliance checks. So it's very granular. Zentral can help you troubleshoot issues in depth with all the events that you have at your fingertips, and even supports remediation scripts. So it's really good for getting the fundamentals of good security posture right. Identify, detect, protect. And we've always seen a big interest in Santa. Overall, we think of Zentral as a framework for a risk-based approach to device management. We have a super detailed view of our devices. We can keep our devices up to date and know it. We can detect when the configuration is off. We have hardening in place, and we use GitOps for control and to prevent mistakes. We can do the lion's share of good security here, good security posture, by getting these basics right. And our goal is to make this as easy as possible for our customers to get this level of compliance and reduce the attack surface significantly. We don't think of Zentral as a security company, but it's the nature of our customers to be security conscious. And we've always had a lot of interest come our way through our Santa Sync server. Security frameworks like NIST CSF, call Application Allowlisting the gold standard of device protection. But we've often heard that people say that it only works on paper because there's no easy way. There are no good allow lists commercially available because no one size fits all. And you either have to accept the monumental task of maintaining an extremely detailed allow list, or severely hamper the user experience to a point that most users find incredibly annoying. And as a result, Santa often ends up as a way to blocklist the worst software out there, but that falls incredibly short of what's possible. The Santa geeks among you probably still remember Upvote, the open source tool that Google used to handle exceptions with, but it's no longer maintained. But today we will show you our own take on it. It solves the two biggest challenges. One, it can handle user-bound exceptions with a voting system like Upvote. And two, our version also takes care of building your first allow list with a streamlined voting process. Today's demo will explore that, but first let's set the scene. In Upvote, users vote on binaries, and every binary has a score. When the score exceeds the first threshold, seen here, the app is allowed for the users that voted on it. And when the score exceeds the second threshold, the app is allowed across the whole fleet. And these thresholds can be set freely. And I think in Google's case, it was enough for 5 users to vote on a binary to create a user-bound rule. And in the same way, more voting power can be given to certain users, especially admins, for decision-making. Let's say I want to run the Banana app. But unlike in most organizations, the Banana app is untrusted for some reason. However, I can upvote the app. Some of my peers also want the Banana app and are casting votes on it. So as soon as we get to 5 votes, the status of the Banana app changes to partially allow listed and will now run on our machines, but our machines only. It's still blocked for the rest of the fleet. But every user that upvotes it will be allowed to run it. Once the number of the votes reaches the next threshold, let's say 10 in our example, the status of Banana app changes again, and it's now globally allow listed for the whole fleet. Before we present our users with social voting mechanisms, we need to prepare and create a solid initial allow list. And in simple terms, our goal is to use the aggregated information to create an allow list for desired apps and binaries, aiming to finalize about 80% of what we need, so that users don't have to vote on every little detail. Santa has a mechanism for this, and it's called monitoring mode. So we collect the events that Santa reports to us, and then use these targets to build an allow list of the most important apps. This is an admin task performed in monitoring mode. And as with Pareto principle, the remaining 20% here can be addressed through social voting by users running in lockdown mode. Let's dig a little deeper how this works. Here's our Zentral sync server. To start with, the Santa agent runs in monitor mode, and it will only enforce a block list. In monitor mode, Santa will emit an event whenever it detects a binary that is not governed by any allow or block rule. Today, Santa handles team IDs and signing IDs as targets. These are stable identifiers for software publishers or apps, and they don't change on app updates, which is ideal for our task. Zentral keeps account on how often Santa has seen the target and aggregates this information. In a comprehensive view over the targets, admins then can vote on ungoverned apps and add them to the allow list. When a target passes the threshold, Zentral creates a corresponding rule and distributes this to the Santa daemon. And in the next sync phase, by default, 10 minutes, this rules will sync. And as the amount of rules increases, the number of events that Zentral receives from Santa decreases, because Santa knows the targets. And once the noise flow has dropped considerably, it's time to transition to lockdown mode. Now, let's see a short demo. We're building an allow list. Santa has run in monitor mode for 3 months. Zentral has collected the unknown events and built aggregates on the potential targets. Our task is to build the global allow list to reduce the number of events collected and approve the important apps and tools so we can move on to lockdown mode. For this process, we want to have peer review in place. In order to get the threshold of 50 points, 2 admin votes with a power of 25 each are required. This here's the Zentral target view. We're going to go with broad strokes. Santa can do very granular rules, but we want to get some work done here. So let's vote on a target that covers a lot of ground by using team IDs. So I filter here on team ID, then I order by executed count, and apply the filter. I click on the topmost one, which is the team ID from Microsoft Corporation, and I have a different window here. I see that I can cast a ballot or give my upvote. And I do this, and immediately we see that on this team ID for my user, the primary user, this is partially allow listed because I have a score of 25. Let's inspect the config for the voting weights. So this is Santa config. We have the voting section. Default voting weight would be 1. We have a threshold set for globally allow listed of 50, partially allow listed of 5. So we exceed that already. And I'm part of a voting group here. And that voting group, that's the editors or admins, and we have a voting weight of 25. We see that the rule is already there. As a primary user, that's just me. I'm allowed to run Microsoft software that's signed by this team ID. But yeah, it's just running for me. So next up is my peer. What's to be done? We have to go to the targets. This is Eric, who's logged in. He goes to Santa targets, and looks for any rules that have upvotes. Again, apply filter, team ID, waiting for my ballot only, and there's also another filter for has upvotes. So that's the to-do list. Now he reviews that, and just, yeah, looks good. Casts a ballot, gives his upvote. He can downvote, but yeah. And now immediately it's globally allow-listed, score of 50. 2 admins with a power of 25 each have voted here. So if we go to the rule that has been created, we can see that it's no longer scoped to a primary user, it's globally allow-listed. And yeah, this is automatically transformed the votes into a rule, as we see here. This was how it's looking before. Now I just reload, we see it's available. And we see the related targets. And that's interesting. What's that? That's mostly signing IDs of individual apps and binaries, helper tools, like here's Microsoft Excel, and there's, I think, Outlook, PowerPoint, VS Code, Word, and so on. And also the helper binaries. They're all governed by this team ID. And yeah, we see, as usual, Microsoft gets away with everything, globally allow-listed. So under this team ID. So the key takeaways. What have we seen in our demo? We want to sort targets to identify the most common ones, and Zentral's aggregates are great for that. The team ID, as said, is a great target to cover a lot of ground quickly. Early, you use them before switching to more granular types like signing IDs. Team IDs and signing IDs are stable targets because they don't change. You don't have to update your allow list anytime an update for any of those apps is rolled out. And we can do peer review. Here we made the requirement of 2 admin votes for the vendor to go allow listed globally, and the vendor is Microsoft. Next, we see how we use Santa in lockdown mode and how the user-facing voting system works. Now, every time someone launches an app that is not allowed, Santa blocks it and sends an event along with the information about the binary to the sync server. The user sees a pop-over that gives them feedback and offers them to take them to the exception portal if they want to vote for an exception. Once the user is authenticated, they can see details about the binary, so they can make sure the decision is intentional, and then vote for it. When the voting score passes one of the 2 thresholds, as explained earlier, Zentral creates the corresponding rule for the user or the whole fleet and distributes it with the next sync cycle. So I'm test user 1. I've downloaded an app. I want to run it. So, as usual, gatekeeper kicks in. I want to open it, but it's blocked. I see I can move the window, it's a pop-up window. I see the application name, I see some information about the publisher, and I can request an exception as user 1. I have to authenticate. Here it's Okta, several steps involved. Of course, with Platform SSO, this would be more seamlessly. And I can see, again, information about my computer, the serial number. I can see the name of the app. I'm the end user, can see that. And the status is untrusted in a score of 0. So, but the user can cast a vote for this application. Vote to allow list. This, cool. Yeah, user has to wait because it's still untrusted. This is on a meter bundle. What is a meter bundle? It's a collection of signing IDs, and Zentral does this to increase the half-life of votes. They will also count for future updates for this app, as said. So again, many signing IDs, team ID, all this is related to the meter bundle. Then we see it's the first user, test user 1 has a vote of 1, status is untrusted, score of 1. Okay. So yeah, we've seen there was a threshold of 5, so fast forward, a few more users vote on this, they authenticate, they cast a vote, it's untrusted, score of 1 climbs to 2, to 3, to 4, and this is the 5th user, status untrusted, score of 4, cast a vote for this application. What happens next? it's partially allow-listed. So yeah, great. So immediately those 5 users have a different user experience. What happened in Zentral? This is where we started. Test user 1, untrusted. This is, I mean, admins can see this, of course. All the events are tracked. If we reload here, it's partially allow-listed. Score of 5. We see all those users who voted. We see when they voted, some metadata in the UI, and the user experience is they can see the status as well if they log in again. So it's partially allow-listed, score 5. And let's double check what's happened in the backend. Yeah, it's allowed by signing ID. So of course, that's interesting for us admins, not the user. End user experience, they can just like use the app, but we're running in lockdown mode. Yeah, so app runs, user happy, no more blocking. So if we go to the configuration, we can see here that in the rules, we can filter, and on all those different rules related here, we can see that those 5 users, in this case, the primary users, are scoped. So the rule only, or the rules only apply to those users. And if we go back here, we can see there's events. We again can filter, and we see that there was a vote on the meter bundle, who voted, what was the vote, waiting, and all of this. And again, with timestamps, this can be shipped to a CM system or an event store. We use Elastic here. So, and we see all those single events with the metadata related over a timeline historically available. So, yeah. Let's go over what we've just seen in our second demo. It works. Zentral successfully created user-bound exceptions. We use meter bundles, so we don't have to do this over and over again. And as always in Zentral, you get the events that each status change in the voting system creates. And there's a complete audit trail of events. I want to highlight the flexibility of the voting system here. The process to get an app to globally allow-listed status would be largely the same. Users will continue voting until the app clears the threshold. But admins can leverage the user signals to push votes over the finishing line, just as demonstrated in the first demo with the waiting for my vote only filter. And the customizable voting power and thresholds for rule creation allow for different types of freedom. You can get very different levels of control. For instance, similar to Google's approach, 5 user votes can create a user-bound allow rule, and there's already a good amount of peer review, we think, that prevents accidents, but it does not prevent the spread of malware. It just slows it down a lot. On the other hand, you could always require an admin vote by setting the thresholds high, even for user-bound exceptions, giving the admin a lot of voting power. Or you could find a middle ground and define the values in such a way that a team and their manager can trigger an exception. The customizable thresholds, we think, the voting weights ensure for great flexibility. 2 weeks ago, we deployed our new voting system to production within our small fleet and switched the whole company to lockdown mode. We have been running Santa and Monitor mode before, but only to block some apps for demo purposes. And putting together our first pass on the allow list only took us a couple of hours, or even less. And we only had to organize a couple of exceptions to get to normal operation. Yes, we experienced some hiccups on the developer max that required a high power vote on individual targets. CD hash is what we used here for some binaries. And there's, of course, lots to learn on how we deal with the developer types or personas in the future. We will definitely include an option for developers to request to be put in monitor mode for a limited time. What's next? So yeah, of course, the new product isn't quite finished yet. We are going to polish the UI, the user experience. We're going to make it possible to display binary info from virus total, so users get an indication whether the app is considered safe. And now that we have the user portal that displays individuality to the primary user, it would be cool to give more feedback from Zentral to the user for information that we collect with OS query queries or the status of the compliance checks on the machine. This transparency could establish trust and buy-in for users who can be insecure about data collection by their employer. And we hear that's a real topic for some organizations who are forced to adopt more rigorous management policies after a long time of laissez-faire. To sum up our talk this morning, the Center voting portal already is a super effective system that starts efficiently executed. And the path to allow listing is blazingly fast. It's a great addition to our MDM with all its sensors for compliance. And when used together, they form a strong foundation for the identify, detect, and protect functions. But you don't have to use Zentral MDM to use the Center voting system. The Center module and the voting system can now be purchased separately from Zentral MDM. It's available as a SaaS, and we're happy to talk to you about it in more detail. And overall, it would be great to talk to you to get more feedback for our future improvements. That's it from me today. Thanks for listening.